My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 32 years old and a data analyst for a venture capital firm in Manhattan. 2 nights ago, I found myself standing in the grand ballroom of the Astoria, an ornate event space on East 52nd Street, clutching a flimsy paper badge that read Limited Access Guest. That moment stung like a slap across the face, but it wasn't just the badge. It was everything that led me there and what it meant about my family, about loyalty, and about time. I showed up that afternoon in my navy wool blazer and perfectly pressed charcoal trousers, my polished black Oxfords clicking against the marble foyer floor. I'd spent the previous 6 months saving up $7,500 working late nights at the office, passing on weekends away, turning down invitations just so I could give my big brother Logan a proper wedding gift. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I'd worked hard to get where I was. Logan's startup had taken off last year, but every new entrepreneur knows the honeymoon phase can cover up a shaky foundation. He'd confided in me late one night over lukewarm coffee that they were scraping by to afford the venue and an overseas honeymoon. I believed him. So I squirreled away a chunk of my bonus money I could have used on a down payment or a trip and kept it hidden in an envelope tucked into my messenger bag. On the ride over in a yellow cab, I thought about the Hamilton pocket watch I wore on a silver chain around my neck, an heirloom from our grandfather inscribed E.L. 1993. I wound it carefully, hearing the soft tick, tick echo in my ears as if ticking away the seconds until the ceremony. That watch had been with us since we were kids the day Dad handed it to Logan on his 13th birthday. Logan had beamed, turning its polished face from side to side. When I graduated college, Logan passed it to me saying I'd earned it. It symbolized our bond, our shared history, our promise that no matter what, we'd always be brothers. I wanted that watch to tick smoothly today to carry me through a joyful reunion. I arrived just as the church ceremony wrapped up. The vaulted ceilings and stained glass windows had felt warm, even holy, but my brother barely looked at me during the vows, just gave a curt nod when I slipped him a quiet congratulations. I chalked it up to nerves. He always was the dramatic type. I smiled, told myself everything would be fine. Then I made my way to the reception check-in. Guests were greeted with champagne flutes, laughter, and those elegant gold-trimmed envelopes with names in calligraphy. I watched as Victor and Amanda, a couple of childhood friends, stepped up their names shining on the cards, directors of Table 9, and the attendant greeted them like royalty. When it was my turn, I half expected someone to lift my coat, offer me a flute, and slide me to a table. Instead, the woman behind the table barely glanced up as she slipped me a stiff square of printer paper on a safety pin. I stared down at it, Limited Access Guest, in bold, unadorned type. I felt the room tilt. The chatter dulled. My chest tightened, my breath hitched. For a beat, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe they'd accidentally run out of fancy badges and had the backup ones ready. But then I saw Mom hovering nearby, her painted smile stiff, her eyes darting away as she leaned in. "That means no plate," she whispered, voice low and cold. I waited for the punchline, the smile that followed a joke. But there was none. She turned on her heel and melted back into the crowd. I was left holding the badge, feeling my grandfather's watch grow heavy against my chest. The ticking stopped, literally. When I glanced at it, the hands had frozen at 7:15 p.m., the exact minute I took that badge. I stepped into the reception hall anyway, half hidden by a drape of guests. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, casting a warm glow on tables set with china and floral centerpieces. Servers in black vests danced around, placing plates of seared salmon and roasted asparagus. Laughter bubbled from every corner. I searched table by table. No name card, no chair, not even a water goblet with my initials. It was as if I didn't exist. I felt an old, familiar ache in my chest, the ache of being overlooked, of being the kid always second to Logan. I thought of the nights I worked 2 jobs to save for my rent. He never asked. He just smiled and said, "You've got this." And I did until today. The room's energy pulsed around me, so close yet out of reach. I drifted toward the gift table, already starting to clear. Envelopes were stacked neatly, tied with ribbons, some leather-bound embossed. There, laying flat and unsealed, was mine, plain white, a little crumpled at the corner. The number on the badge had told me no plate, but this open envelope told me no respect, no recognition of my effort. I picked up the envelope, eased it open, and slipped out the check. $7,500, every penny, earmarked for a honeymoon they said they couldn't afford. I held it in my hand, sliding my thumb across my signature. There was a moment where I hesitated, where I wondered if I should stay, pin that badge to my lapel, grin through humiliation, swallow my pride, and be the forgiving little brother. But something hard and new ignited in me, a resolve I'd never felt before. I reached into the nearest decorative trash bin and let the envelope drop. The soft thud echoed louder than I expected. Guests glanced over, but no one moved to stop me. Then, without looking back, I turned and walked toward the exit. My heart pounded. My palms slicked. The cold night air hit me like a revelation as I stepped outside. I opened my messenger bag, unlocked my grandfather's watch, and slipped it inside my coat pocket. I didn't want its memory tarnished by tonight's betrayal. I made it about 10 steps when I heard it, chairs scraping, murmurs, my name rising above the hum. Ethan, wait! My brother emerged, voice edged with anger and panic. Behind him, Mom and Dad shouted, "Come back, please!" They sounded desperate, like sailors clinging to a sinking ship. But I kept walking to the black SUV idling curbside. I opened the passenger door, slid in, and closed it without a glance. I heard Mom's sob choke off. Logan pounded on the glass. I watched them through the tinted window. My parents collapsed on the curb. My brother's shoulders slumped, the party lights flickering behind them. Then the driver pulled away. I sat back, pressed the watch to my lips through the coat. It was still stopped. The engine's rumble mingled with my racing thoughts. How many times had I tried to run toward them only to be ushered aside, to be treated like some expendable resource instead of a son, a brother? The city's skyline washed past, indifferent. By morning, my phone buzzed, texts from Mom. "Can we talk? Please don't ruin the weekend." From Dad. "We love you, son." From Logan. "Man, come back." None admitted fault. All blamed circumstances, oversight, logistics, miscommunication. They treated my reaction like the problem, not their cold calculation. My heart sank deeper, but beneath the sting was a strange steadiness. I realized I didn't owe them an explanation. I didn't owe them urgency, but I did owe myself the right to set the terms. I showered, made breakfast, cleaned the kitchen. I left the apartment feeling lighter, as though stepping out had already shed a weight. Yet something gnawed at me. They needed that money. I knew they were on the brink. My insider tip about Logan's cash flow struggles wasn't exaggeration, so why didn't they want me there but desperately wanted my check? Curiosity drew me back. Not to fix things, my pride wouldn't allow that, but to watch them squirm. I drove up to their townhouse on West 83rd, the same street I grew up on. Logan's car was in the driveway, Dad's luxury sedan beside it. I parked across the street, walked up, and let myself in. No knock, no preamble. I felt a surge of power. I was the unpredictable element now. Inside, they sat in the living room, eyes on me, mouths thin. Dad straightened his expensive tie. Mom's lipstick seemed to crack under her tense smile. Logan hovered by the window, avoiding eye contact. My entrance snapped their rehearsed calm. Dad spoke first. "Ethan, it's unfortunate what happened." He said it like a weather report, cold, distant, avoiding responsibility. Mom chimed in about oversight spreadsheet errors. Logan mumbled something about stress and chaos. They treated betrayal like a software bug to be patched, not like the knife twisting in my heart. I listened, nodding occasionally, feeling my resolve crystallize. When they finished their damage control, I looked at them and said I might change my mind. Just that. I stood, turned, and walked out. They sank into stunned silence. I felt their hope hanging in the air, like they thought they'd won me back. I didn't look back. The watch in my pocket weighed like a judgment. Its hands refused to move. Tonight, I'll lie awake, not angry, but analyzing every glance, every whispered plan that put me here. Tomorrow, I'll decide if they deserve that check or if they'll learn the cost of freezing time when it belongs to someone else. And the watch will still sit in my pocket stuck at 7:15 p.m., reminding me that sometimes you have to stop the clock to find out who really values time. I woke up the next morning with the sunlight slicing through the blinds, painting stripes across my bedroom floor like the bars of a cage I was about to break out of. I strapped the Hamilton pocket watch to my belt loop instead of wearing it around my neck, let its frozen hands swinging by my side remind me that time was now my weapon, not my poison. I brewed black coffee, the bitter sting grounding me in the moment, and read Mom's latest text, "Let's talk Ethan. We just want to make things right." I stared at my phone as if it were a ticking bomb, knowing that replying would either diffuse tension or set off a chain reaction I couldn't call back. Instead, I put on my leather jacket, grabbed my messenger bag, and headed downstairs to meet Olivia at that downtown cafe, the one with the cracked terrazzo tiles, and the barista who always spelled my name Ethan. She slid into the booth opposite me, her eyes the color of storm clouds, phone in hand. "I got it," she said, quietly, pushing the screen across the table. It was an email thread, Catherine Walker, to the event coordinator subject line, family seating revisions, and beneath it, Logan's single-line reply, approved. No questions. I sipped my coffee and tasted ash. This was the proof I needed, cold concrete, undeniable. But Olivia leaned forward, voice low. "There's more." She tapped her notes. Marcus Lee, the wedding photographer, slipped her a USB drive. He'd captured hours of behind-the-scenes footage, Catherine whispering to the check-in staff, Dad nodding gravely when they talked about the budget considerations, Logan smirking as he watched me wander the ballroom lost. My heart thudded. This was dynamite. I felt the old rush of adrenaline tighten my chest. All my life, I'd been the anchor, steady and dependable, the sibling everyone counted on, but never really saw. Now I could flip the script. I could force them to see me, to understand what they'd done. But broadcasting this evidence carried risk, legal reprisals for privacy invasion, accusations of blackmail. The Walker name twisted against me in high-powered law offices. Yet I'd spent too many mornings waking up heartbroken to tiptoe around guilt. I owed myself action, not regret. I met Marcus outside a seedy photo lab on 14th Street. He looked like a jazz musician gone corporate, camera strap across his broad shoulder. He handed me the USB as if passing a live grenade. "Make it count," he said, eyes wary. I nodded, sliding the drive into my bag and feeling its weight against my ribs like the watch's hands still stuck at 7:15. Next, I enlisted Dr. Naomi Patel, Logan's VP of Operations, a brilliant strategist who'd quietly admired my work when Logan bragged about my data models at board meetings. Naomi agreed to meet me in the hollowed-out lounge of a defunct subway station converted into a pop-up bar, neon lights flickering overhead. Over kombucha cocktails, she warned Ethan, "Once you go live with this, there's no taking it back. You'll burn bridges, not just with your family, but with every mutual friend, every colleague who ever saw you as nice Ethan." But I tasted defiance in my mouth, defiance and freedom. "I want them to respect me," I said. "I want them to feel what it's like to be erased." Naomi slipped me a network cable, a direct line into the venue's audiovisual system. She'd once paused a board presentation mid-slide to highlight a competitor's misstep. Now she'd help me hijack the wedding's big screen. I walked out of that bar feeling the last threads of hesitation snap. Back in my apartment, I set up my laptop, synced the email thread and video clips into a single presentation, timed the footage, so Catherine's whisper would play just as the slides changed to show Logan's smirk. I tested the link static flicker, then disconnected. The plan was chaotic but precise. Tonight at the rehearsal dinner, I'd beam the truth across the projector right before the toasts. The rehearsal dinner was in a glass-walled rooftop loft near Times Square. I'd blend in as tech support, bringing extra cables. If security got wise, I could claim I was fixing a dead mic. But if they unplugged me, the whole thing would collapse and I'd be exposed not as a truth teller, but as a saboteur. I dressed in black from head to toe, the only colors left in my world after the badge had drained the warmth. I wound the pocket watch once, watching its hands jitter, but stay frozen, as if it too was caught between loyalty and betrayal. On the elevator up, I felt every floor as a countdown. The second I stepped into the loft, I heard the hum of conversation, Logan greeting investors. Dad laughing with old law firm friends, Mom adjusting floral arrangements. My blood pounded like a subway train racing through a tunnel. I wheeled my gear cart under the projector, pretending to align cables. No one stopped me. They were too wrapped up in selfies and small talk. I connected the network cable Naomi provided, slipped the USB into a hidden port, and fed the link into the AV queue. I clicked play and felt a thrill as the main screen flickered to life with Catherine's email typed in plain text, "No room for Ethan Walker. Save face, save money." Gasps rippled through the room. Glasses froze mid-lift, and Logan's face went white under the neon glow. Before anyone could react, the video cut to Marcus's footage, Catherine whispering at the check-in desk, Logan's approving nod. Dad's guilty glance. Time slowed, like watching raindrops hit pavement in slow motion. The watch on my belt loop chimed once, an app notification I'd set to mimic its tick, but the real hands stayed at 7:15, mocking the moment. Mom's lipstick smudged as she put her hand over her mouth. Dad's jaw clenched. Logan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Investors eyed their phones, worried about PR fallout. Friends looked at me stunned. A hush fell deeper than the black of my clothes. Then, from behind the loft's glass wall, I heard the click of security's shoes on concrete. My pulse spiked. They were coming for me. I grabbed the cables, yanked them loose, and backed toward the emergency exit. Every step felt like sprinting through glass shards. As I slipped out into the stairwell, the screen behind me reverted to the wedding slideshow, flowers and kisses and laughter, all a lie. The hum of voices chasing me up the stairs, the blare of a security radio, the distant wail of a siren, it all echoed in my ears like a declaration. The game had changed. I burst out onto the street, the neon lights of Times Square roaring above me, and I ran until the watch tapped my thigh. Its battery died trying to keep time with betrayal. In that moment, breathing hard, I felt unshackled. They'd seen the truth. Now I had to decide whether I wanted reconciliation or ruin. I kept running, the city's heartbeat pounding in rhythm with mine, and I knew I'd never look at my family or that watch the same way again. I didn't sleep that night. After ducking out of the rehearsal dinner and disappearing into the neon blur of Times Square, I found myself back in my tiny East Village apartment, pacing the length of the place like a caged animal. My breaths came fast, shallow, the afterglow of adrenaline still humming through my veins. On the coffee table lay the evidence, the USB drive my laptop open to the email thread, and that old Hamilton watch, its hands stubbornly frozen at 7:15. I stared at it, willing it to tick, willing time to move again, because once you expose the rot at the heart of something, you can't unring that bell. When morning light crept in, I was still awake, bleary-eyed, but strangely calm. I realized I'd crossed a line. I'd weaponized my family's secrets, broadcast their betrayal to every guest in that loft, but the rock in my stomach was relief more than regret. For the first time, I was in control of my narrative. They had tried to write me out, to erase me with a flimsy paper badge. Now they'd be forced to reckon with the truth on a public stage. My phone pinged with a flurry of messages. Logan's number flashed twice. No text, just missed calls. Mom's name had the little ellipsis, Mom. Mom and Dad's voicemail. Son, call me, please. I didn't answer. Instead, I dressed slowly in dark jeans and a crisp white tee, the only outfit that felt honest after a night of shadows. I wound the Hamilton watch, its hands didn't budge, and clipped it to my belt loop. That stopped clock was my constant reminder time had stopped for our family the moment they decided I wasn't worth a seat at the table. I met Julian Santos at a corner deli on 3rd Avenue. Julian was my college roommate turned lawyer, a kid from Queens who'd fought every day to get into NYU law and now worked at one of Manhattan's top litigation firms. When I told him what I'd done, he leaned back in his seat, slid his coffees across the table. Ethan, you know this could go sideways big time. They can sue you for invasion of privacy, defamation, trespassing, hacking into their AV system. You could end up losing half your inheritance, if not more. His eyes weren't alarmed, just probing like he was measuring the length of a drop I was about to take. I picked at the corner of my cup sleeve. I know what's at stake. But look, they treated me like I was less than family, like I was disposable. Every apology text has been a round of PR spin. No one said, I'm sorry. No one's owned it. I want to give them a real reckoning. Julian shrugged. All right, let's talk defenses. Let's build a case. We can't let them flip this on you. I met Naomi Patel in a sterile conference room at her firm's Midtown offices. She sat behind a polished oak table, calm and composed in a navy suit. I laid out my plan document. Everything gather affidavits, timestamp those emails, secure Marcus's raw footage. Naomi plugged in her laptop, downloaded the clips I'd sent, and whispered, We'll package this as evidence of emotional distress breach of fiduciary duty because they promised family support verbally, repeatedly. There's precedent courts have recognized family members owe a duty of fair dealing in certain contexts. We can argue you were induced to contribute $7,500 under false pretenses. My pulse ticked up. Not false pretenses, I corrected gently. They lied to me. They promised family access, then yanked it. Naomi nodded. Semantics, but I see your point. We'll file a petition for restitution plus damages for emotional harm, and keep everything sealed until we need to go public. Armed with legal backing evidence and the frozen watch as my talisman, I felt invincible until the first crack appeared. Logan called me at midnight, voice raw. Ethan, what are you doing? You're destroying us. I silenced him. I'm building a world where people can't do that to me, I said. Where you can't lie to your own brother. He yelled then. You think you're some kind of hero and hung up. I stared at my phone, realizing that a hero's work is lonely. The next morning, the New York tabloids smelled blood. I woke to notifications. Gawker headline bride's brother hijacks wedding rehearsal with family feud. Page 6 Walker wedding in chaos money. Lies brother's revenge. Law 360 insider threat. Groom's bro sued family for misrepresentation. My phone buzzed with interview requests, ex-lives of friends contacting me for commentary. The virality was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. My Instagram blew up some DMs, offered support. You go, Ethan, way to stand up for yourself while others were vicious. You psycho, ruining a wedding. The watch lay on my desk like a judge, its hands unblinking, refusing to acknowledge the whirlwind. The social backlash forced me to confront my own motivations. Was I seeking justice, or was I driven by anger? I spent an afternoon wandering the High Line, the frozen watch in my pocket, biting into my hip. I watched tourists laugh on benches, business people stride by in tailored suits, and I felt both part of this city and utterly separate. In that moment, I realized my fight was bigger than Logan or the wedding. It was a stand against the casual cruelty of privilege when wealth decides who deserves dignity and who doesn't. That afternoon, I received an unexpected message from Isabella Izzy Walker, my brother's fiance's 9-year-old stepdaughter. I'd met her only a few times. She sent a photo of a drawing 2 stick figures holding hands under a giant melting clock. On the clock face, 7:15. Above them, the words, "Family stops when clock stops." My chest tightened. Even she felt it. I typed back, "Thank you, Izzy. I see you." That small act, acknowledging her, reminded me that innocence still existed amidst the fallout. Emboldened, I decided to leverage social media one more time, but this time on my terms. I recorded a short video on my terrace, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind me. My voice was steady, my face determined. Hi, I'm Ethan Walker. 2 nights ago, I was handed a paper badge that said limited access guest at my brother's wedding rehearsal. My parents whispered it meant I wasn't worth a seat or a plate despite years of loyalty and sacrifice. I didn't stay. And I didn't walk away quietly. I exposed their deception and demanded accountability. Because family isn't a status symbol, and respect isn't something you buy or dismiss. I'm sharing this to stand up for anyone who's ever been pushed aside by those who claim to love them. You deserve better. I posted it on YouTube, tagged the Walker family, and watched as the views ticked upward 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. My heart thudded, equal parts fear and liberation. But tonight's the night they decide whether to forgive me or fight back. I'll be at the family's annual summer gala at the Met Rooftop Garden, supposedly open invitation despite everything. I'll wear a simple gray blazer, black jeans, and of course, the Hamilton watch clipped to my belt. I'll walk into that garden under fairy lights, past the champagne tables and hors d'oeuvre carts, and I'll stand before them knowing they've seen my video, seen the evidence, seen the world's reaction. I'll decide then press charges or extend an olive branch. Because if justice is cold, reconciliation is colder. But maybe, just maybe, time can start again. As I lock my apartment door, I place a hand on my chest over where the watch hangs silent and still. And I whisper, let's see if we can make it tick. I stood at the threshold of the Metropolitan Museum's rooftop garden in a simple charcoal blazer and black jeans, winding the Hamilton watch one more time, even though its hands refused to move. The night air was thick with the scent of magnolia and expensive cologne, the city skyline winking with skyscraper lights. Below us, Central Park's dark expanse spread like an inky sea, and somewhere out of sight, jazz floated across the rooftop. The gala was in full swing. Caterers wove between guests, carrying silver trays of mini crab cakes, and laughter and small talk bounced off the glass walls of the museum's modern wing. An open invitation banner had hung on the staircase landing as if my name still spelled inclusion, but I knew that line was as empty as the seat they'd denied me at my brother's wedding. I checked my phone one last time. No new comments on my video, only the steady pulse of notifications. People sharing the clip, strangers commending my courage, trolls demanding I grow a spine or apologize already. My chest tightened. I'd expected confrontation tonight, either a grudging acceptance or a legal ambush, but everyone was playing coy, gliding past me with smile-past eyes. The irony felt brutal. I'd forced my family's secrets into the open, yet now they pretended everything was normal. I spotted Olivia near the bar, her dark hair pulled back, wearing a sleek emerald dress that contrasted with her storm cloud eyes. She slipped me a conspiratorial nod as I approached. "They're nervous," she whispered. "I saw Logan staring at your video on his phone." She tapped her temple. "Mom's been whispering to every guest with a connection trying damage control." I sipped a glass of sparkling water, the bubbles stinging my throat. "They're professionals at spin control," I murmured. "But this time the story's too big to squash." Olivia leaned in. "Lower Marcus is up on the balcony on the north side. He's got the original footage queued if you need backup tonight." My jaw clenched with gratitude and guilt. I was dragging my friends into this storm with me. Across the terrace, Dad stood by a high-top table, empty champagne flute in hand, looking lost. His tailored suit hung oddly on his frame as though he'd shrunk in the heat of shame. Mom hovered behind him, touching his arm, her red lips tight and glossy. Logan paced between them, jaw set, hair gelled just enough to catch the light. I could feel their eyes searching for me across the space, trying to judge if I was safe to approach or required legal clearance. I counted the seconds, 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. I made my way toward them. Each step felt like cutting through water. My mind raced through every conversation I'd rehearsed: apology and callback ultimatum and ceasefire lawyer's letter and restorative group therapy. I didn't know which script I'd choose until I stood face to face. As I neared the watch in my pocket, caught on a jacket seam, and I yanked it free, half expecting it to tick, but it remained defiantly still at 7:15. Dad spotted me first. His face flickered between relief and fear. "Ethan," he began, voice raw. Mom's lips parted in a practiced smile that did nothing to reach her eyes. Logan stiffened and turned, crossing his arms. The guests nearby murmured, as if sensing the drama of two brothers frozen in place. I stopped 3 feet from them. I folded my arms and looked from Dad's creased forehead to Mom's forced cordiality, finally settling on Logan's guarded gaze. "You invited me here," I said evenly. "Which version of family are we celebrating tonight? The one that needs me for optics, or the one that values me for me?" My words carried across the hush of the terrace. A waiter shifted behind me, poised to refill someone's glass, but no one ordered a drink. Dad cleared his throat. "Son, we've been trying to reach you. We're sorry about how things unfolded." His apology was clipped as though he'd learned the phrase from a PR handbook. Mom added, "There was a mistake, and but Logan cut her off. "Ethan, can we please talk in private?" His voice trembled between guilt and frustration. We stepped aside from the small crowd toward a cluster of potted bamboo that rattled in the breeze. Once we were out of earshot of the other guests, Logan exhaled sharply. "Look, I hate that you had to do what you did, but you left me no choice." They wouldn't listen. I let him have that he was right. "You didn't have to lie," I replied quietly. "You didn't have to exclude me. You could have asked for help, but instead you gambled my dignity on your budget." Logan's shoulders sagged. I panicked. "It was a 5-minute decision. I convinced myself you'd understand." He looked at the ground. "That's worse. You thought I'd understand being treated like a charity case." My chest tightened. His confession was raw and unexpected, but not enough. I pulled out my phone and showed him the comment feed on my video messages from friends, colleagues, even strangers who'd faced similar betrayals. "People out there, real people, are backing me up," I said. "They've seen the badge, the email, the footage. They know what it feels like to be erased." Logan winced like he'd been slapped by invisible hands. I tucked the phone away. "This isn't about ideology or social standing. It's about not letting money dictate who you love." The words felt brutal in my own mouth, but I meant them. Logan reached toward me, hesitated, then withdrew his hand. "Can we start over?" he asked. "I'll make it right." I glanced past him toward Mom and Dad, who watched us like hawks. Every fiber in me screamed that right had a price tag. "How?" I asked. "An apology. Giving me the check back. Restoring my name in the group chat." His eyes darted. "We'll match your $7,500 for charity. I'll write a public apology." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Charity, that's your solution. You use my hurt as a PR stunt and call it reconciliation." Logan turned away. I felt the legend of the watch tug at me, the promise of brothers bound beyond time, the cruel irony of its frozen hands. I gripped it tightly in my fist, forcing it against my palm. "I want more than slogans," I said. "I want acknowledgement that I matter." My voice broke with the weight of years spent sidelined. Logan turned back, tears in his eyes. "I do see you. I always have." He closed the distance and embraced me. The gesture shocked me, warmth flooding through my ribs. For a second, I felt the old bond flicker to life, like the watch's hands might jump forward. But then, as his arms tightened, I pulled away. "Not yet," I replied. "I need time." I heard a gasp from a nearby table. Someone had snapped my picture. Mom and Dad moved toward us, arms outstretched. I stepped back further, putting space between us. "I'm sorry Dad called. Let's talk after the gala." I shook my head. "No, we talk on my terms." Then I turned and walked back toward the edge of the rooftop, the city lights framing my silhouette. I found Olivia waiting by the railing, her arms folded. "How did it go?" she asked. I held up the Hamilton watch. "He tried," I said, "but I won't wind this until I know he means it." Olivia nodded toward the crowd. "They're all eyes now," she pointed out. "Whatever you decide next will define you in their minds." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Then I decide tonight." I gazed down at the watch still frozen at 7:15, my pulse echoing in my temples. The city stretched endlessly before me, full of stories of betrayal and forgiveness, of time lost and regained. I realized this moment, this choice, would be the hinge upon which my future turned. I slipped the watch back into my pocket and strode into the light of the gala, ready to face whatever came next, but knowing that once time started again, nothing would ever be the same. I left the gala feeling more fractured than before, though I'd thought last night's confrontation would bring clarity. The city lights receded behind me as I hailed a cab on Fifth Avenue, sliding inside and folding into the worn leather seat. My heart was a jumble of triumph and emptiness. I'd forced my family to face their betrayal, but their half-apology felt as hollow as the champagne flutes they'd held when they thought I wasn't listening. I wound the Hamilton watch one more time, watching its hands tremble but remain frozen at 7:15. I pressed it to my forehead, the cold metal a reminder that time alone wouldn't heal this. In the back of the cab, my phone buzzed, a text from Naomi. "Documents are drafted. Ready when you are." Another from Julian's suit up for court, and one from Izzy, the little girl whose drawing had pierced my heart. "Are you okay?" I stared at her words, guilt pooling in my chest. I owed her protection from this storm, but I wasn't sure I could offer it. The cab dropped me at my apartment block on 9th Street. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, each step echoing my racing thoughts. Once inside, I flicked on my laptop and watched the overnight analytics for my YouTube video. It had doubled, then tripled, now approaching 500,000 views. Comments flooded in. People sharing their own family betrayals, others urging me to keep fighting, some demanding, "I forgive." I leaned back, eyes stinging with exhaustion. Social media had become a courtroom of public opinion, unpredictable, brutal, and strangely comforting. I realized that by going public, I'd given voice to countless people who felt sidelined by those closest to them. That realization settled into a fierce pride. I wasn't just fighting my family, I was giving permission for others to reclaim their stories. Still, I knew I couldn't survive on validation alone. I opened the legal folder. Naomi had prepared a petition for restitution, a claim for emotional damages, a draft of interrogatories to be served on my parents and Logan, and a proposed temporary restraining order to keep them from deleting evidence or altering their communications. The documents were meticulous and thorough, Naomi's handiwork. And yet, as I scrolled through clause after clause, I felt a pang of disquiet. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a war against the people who'd taught me to walk, who'd read me bedtime stories, who'd been my first champions. Could I really turn my family into defendants? The question gnawed at me like a rodent under floorboards. I shut my laptop and reached for my phone to call Julian, but it rang straight to voicemail. I considered texting, but my fingers hovered above the keyboard and then withdrew. I needed to think, not rush. I decided on a walk. Fresh air always cleared my head. I grabbed the coat Mom had gifted me last Christmas, the one I'd grumbled about at the time, and slipped it on. The pockets held a Metro card and the watch. I locked the door behind me and stepped into the humid summer night, the pavement still warm from the day's heat. I walked south toward the East River, following the unmapped route I'd often taken when I needed to sort my thoughts. The city's noise softened under the canopy of raised expressways and clattering trains above. I paused on the FDR Drive overlook, leaning on the railing, looking out at the black water reflecting the highway lights. I could almost imagine that reflection wasn't a broken mirror of my life, but a clear pool offering a fresh start. But then the water's surface rippled with a passing tugboat's wake, and I remembered that nothing stays still for long. I thought back to Izzy's drawing, a melting clock, two stick figures dancing under its dripping face. The image burned in my mind, proof that a child saw the injustice as clearly as I did. She didn't have my legal options or my grown-up fears, just an innate sense of fairness. That sparked something inside me. Maybe the fight wasn't only about money or recognition. Maybe it was about preserving innocence from the corrosion of cynicism. I imagined calling or FaceTiming her, promising I'd do right by her, but I knew better than to make promises I couldn't keep. My phone buzzed again, this time a direct message on Instagram from a stranger. My sister went through this. Thank you for speaking up. Then another. My dad did the same to me at my wedding. Bless you, Ethan. I scrolled through a dozen more, each one a testament to how widespread this kind of familial betrayal really was. I felt my resolve harden. I would not back down. If this battle meant exposing every ugly corner of my own family's life, so be it. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was helping countless others find their voices. At the corner of 14th Street, I spotted Marcus Lee leaning against a lamppost camera case slung over his shoulder. He gave me a nod as I approached. Thought you might be out here, he said quietly. Wanted to make sure you're okay. His presence steadied me. He'd risked his career and possibly been subpoenaed just to help me document the truth. I'm fine, I said, though my voice cracked a little. Are you? He shrugged. Family drama's bigger than a wedding feed. I've seen worse. He flipped open his case, revealing a set of high-end lenses and a small field recorder. If you need more backup footage voice memos, I'm set. I nodded, gratitude warming my chest. Thanks, Marcus. I might call you soon. He glanced at the river, then back at me. You sure you want to go nuclear on them? There it was, the question I kept dodging. Nuclear. Lawsuits, public shaming, irreparable damage. Could I really unleash that? I took a breath, feeling the humid breeze slice across my face. If I don't, what message am I sending? I asked. That it's okay to treat your own brother like dust and get away with it. Marcus didn't answer, but his silence said enough. He handed me a small memory card, just in case. I placed it in my pocket alongside the watch. We parted ways, and I continued walking deeper into the night. My mind played out scenarios: filing the petition tomorrow, serving papers midweek, watching my parents' expressions as they read my claims. I pictured the headlines, family sued for emotional neglect. I pictured Logan testifying or crumbling under pressure. And then I realized that the end game wasn't about winning or losing, but about defining my own worth. The risk was enormous. I could lose my inheritance, my family's trust, maybe my sanity in endless depositions. But staying silent meant accepting that my feelings, my time, my sacrifices were expendable. I'd rather stand alone than be complicit in my own erasure. When I finally returned home, I collapsed onto my couch, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The city's hum seeped through the windows. I closed my eyes and felt the outline of the Hamilton watch in my pocket, its hands still stuck at 7:15. I realized that moment of betrayal would always mark a before and after in my life. But maybe if I played this right, it could also mark a turning point, a chance to rewrite the story of what family means, to prove that loyalty isn't a one-way street. I pulled out my phone and drafted a text to Naomi. Let's file next week. No more waiting. My thumb hovered over send. I remembered Izzy's drawing and typed a short reply to her. Thank you for believing in me. I hit send. Then I texted Julian, I need to see you Monday morning. Bring coffee. I paused. I hadn't responded to Logan or Mom or Dad. I typed, I'll be in touch, and then deleted it, replacing it with nothing. Because some lines once drawn can't be half erased. I pocketed my phone, reached for the watch, and whispered, let's see if justice can restart these hands. Then I lay back, the city lights flickering through the blinds, wondering if I was ready for what came next and if time would ever move for me again. I woke up the morning of the court hearing with a jittery mix of dread and determination rippling through me. The Hamilton pocket watch still pinned to my belt loop like a silent judge refusing to move past 7:15. I'd said to Naomi yesterday, "Once we file, I'm crossing a line I can't uncross." She'd nodded, eyes steady. "That line is your story. Nobody else will tell it unless you do." So I put on my best navy suit, simple, unflashy, and anchored it with a silk tie the exact shade of Midnight Lake. I'd spent most of last night running scenarios in my head, parents testifying with contrite smiles, Logan apologizing on the stand, me watching from counsel table with my chest tight as a drum. But the truth is, I had no idea how they'd show up. I only knew I had to. In the back seat of the cab to the courthouse, I thumbed through the tens of thousands of comments on my YouTube and Instagram messages of solidarity, stories of other limited access guests, strangers sharing sorrow and hope. I felt both anchored and adrift. For years, I'd measured my worth by family approval, by that badge of belonging. Now I was staking my dignity on strangers' empathy and an assembly of cold, unblinking evidence. I closed my eyes and pictured the watch frozen hands marking the instant my family decided I was expendable. Today, those very hands were a talisman, a reminder that the fight was bigger than my hurt. It was about making sure no one else felt that exclusion without repercussion. The courthouse foyer smelled of polished wood and institutional despair, people in ill-fitting suits clutching manila folders with bloodshot eyes. I checked in with the clerk, received my case number, and took a seat in the gallery. Naomi arrived next, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder, stiff with files. Julian was beside her suit, immaculate coffee in hand despite the early hour. Their presence was a lifeline. I offered them a half smile and closed my eyes, letting their confidence flow into me. Before the hearing, Marcus slipped me a small envelope containing the memory card of raw footage, his insurance policy, in case anyone disputed authenticity. Olivia couldn't make it. She'd taken on a critical project at work. Izzy sent a good luck text, "You're brave like a superhero." I stared at the words, feeling a twist of warmth. "Thank you, kiddo," I secretly replied. The hearing room was austere, a single judge's bench, counsel tables on either side, a dock where the defendant would stand. My family arrived last, Dad in a dark gray suit that hung loosely, Mom in a designer dress that looked stiff and fussy, Logan looking pale and haunted. I realized they didn't know which face I'd show them today, the forgiving little brother they'd once known, or the man who refused half measures. I straightened my tie and stood when the bailiff called the room to order. Case number 47812. Ethan Walker versus Richard Walker. Catherine Walker and Logan Walker. Before this court are petitioner's motions for restitution of $7,500 plus damages for emotional distress and an injunction against further defamatory communications. That was my script practice until my tongue bled. Naomi stood first to argue the procedural grounds proper service jurisdiction timeliness. She was precise, her words like scalpel cuts. Julian followed with the substantive argument, "Your Honor, this is a case of emotional fraud." The petitioner was induced to contribute a significant sum under explicit representations that he would be welcomed, acknowledged, and treated as family. Those representations were revoked deliberately, as evidenced by email threads, video recordings, and first-hand testimony. Such conduct warrants restitution and makes him a de facto victim of misrepresentation. His calm delivery made me proud. I saw Dad's eyes flicker with shame and fear. Then came the moment I dreaded my chance to speak. The judge nodded, and I rose, heart pounding so fiercely I heard it in my ears. I approached the lectern, cleared my throat, and spoke slowly. "Your Honor, all my life. I believed that family meant unconditional support. I believed that blood ties were stronger than any disagreement or financial strain. But 2 weeks ago, I was handed a paper badge, limited access guest, at my brother's wedding rehearsal. With that badge, my family told me I was not enough for their celebration. They told me I was not enough for their love. I had saved every penny I could spare to help them afford the honeymoon they said they couldn't manage on their own. I offered it with an open heart. Instead of gratitude, I got a message that my presence was a hindrance. My voice caught. I steadied it. I'm not here for revenge or to humiliate them further, though I have shared this story publicly because I refused to let that badge speak for me. I'm here to find accountability to remind my family and anyone who feels the sting of exclusion that dignity cannot be bought or dismissed. We, as people, deserve respect, especially from those closest to us. I looked out at Mom, who'd covered her mouth with her hand, tears in her eyes, and at Logan, who stared at the floor. My chest felt unlocked, as though those words had released years of unspoken pain. We called our first witness, Marcus Lee. He testified about the video recordings, how he captured Catherine's whisper to the event staff, Logan's approving nod, Dad's worried glance. He described the email and how it was drafted 3 days before the rehearsal dinner. Then Olivia's recorded deposition played her calm voice explaining how she'd seen the seating list change. We had printed copies of the emails, time-stamped and authenticated. We had the check itself with bank stamps verifying it was never cashed. The gallery murmured. I saw jaws tighten on the Walker side and heads nod in solidarity from strangers in the room. When it was our turn to rest, Naomi closed with "Your Honor." This is not a trivial matter of social awkwardness. This is active, emotional, and financial neglect by those who pledged to protect and include. We request the full restitution of $7,510,000 in emotional damages and an order preventing the defendants from deleting or altering further communications. Julian handed the judge the motion. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. Mrs. Walker, Mr. Walker, Mr. Walker Sr., you've heard the evidence and the arguments. How do you respond? Dad stood first, voice shaky. Your Honor, my son is right. We were wrong. It was a terrible oversight. We meant no harm. We apologize and will return the money immediately. He looked at me, beseeching. Mom followed, tears brimming. Ethan, please know how sorry we are. I never should have let it happen. Logan stood last I panicked, bro. You know how we were stretched thin. I'm sorry. His apology felt like a cage door opening. But I knew words and money returned would not automatically heal the wound. I swallowed. The judge drummed his pen on the bench. I find the defendants liable for restitution of $7,500 plus emotional damages of $5,000. I further order that all communications related to this matter remain preserved for 30 days, at which point the court will reevaluate any further relief. Court is adjourned. A light knock of the gavel echoed in the room. I felt a wave of relief, exhaustion, and unexpected emptiness, as though I'd climbed a mountain only to stand on its peak alone. Afterward, in the hallway, Naomi and Julian clapped me on the back. Marcus and Olivia were waiting, sharing hugs. Even Izzy FaceTimed me, holding up her melted clock drawing. Mom approached, tears streaking her makeup. Ethan, I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself. Dad nodded, voice thick. We'll pay you today. Whatever you need. Logan hesitated, then said softly, I hope you can forgive me someday. I looked at them, the people who'd defined me my whole life, then at my friends, the strangers who'd rallied behind me, and I felt the bitter tang of victory. I thanked them all, but I knew the real work lay ahead, rebuilding trust, defining boundaries, balancing justice with compassion. The judge's order gave me money and a measure of vindication, but it couldn't repair the invisible fracture in our family's soul. I stepped outside into the bright spring afternoon, blinking against the sun. The city rushed by, yellow cabs, suited bankers, street performers, and I felt a shift inside me like a current in a stream. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the Hamilton watch. Its hands were still frozen at 7:15. I wound it again, watching the gears move under the crystal, but the hands stubbornly stayed where they were. I smiled a small, triumphant curve. Time would move again, I was sure, maybe for this watch, maybe for my family, maybe for me. But it would only move on my terms, not theirs. As I walked down the courthouse steps, court papers in hand, I felt the weight of choices yet to come. Do I cut ties entirely, forging a new definition of family with my friends and allies? Do I attempt reconciliation, slowly testing whether their remorse can hold more weight than their betrayal? Or do I leave the door open, letting them stand on the threshold, wondering if I'll ever let them in again? My phone buzzed a message from a news outlet wanting an interview. Another from Izzy. Can we see each other soon? I folded the court documents and slipped them into my briefcase. I looked at the watch one last time, its frozen face a reminder of both my pain and my power. Then I turned toward the subway entrance, the roar of the city enveloping me. I didn't know what would come next, whether the watch would ever tick forward, whether my parents would learn that respect isn't earned by money alone, whether forgiveness was possible or a fool's errand. But I did know this: I'd reclaimed my time, my story, my worth. And now, with each step, I would decide how to invest the moments that lay ahead. Because for the first time, I wasn't living by someone else's clock. I was living by mine. Story 2. I'm Logan Carter, 35 year consultant in Austin, Texas, and sometimes your gut screams the truth before your mind catches up. Pulling into Franklin's Steakhouse that Saturday, I already knew this family-only dinner was a trap. My mom's text, nothing fancy, 7 p.m. Family only felt like a dare. The last time I let them pick the place, I walked away $900 poorer, and a punchline, good thing Logan's single, with no kids. They laughed as if my freedom made me cheap entertainment. But I showed up anyway. Family's blood right. Inside Franklin's, the hostess pointed to the private room. There they were, Dad Frank, in his usual boisterous mode. Samantha, my twin, glued to her phone. Todd, her banker boyfriend, hogging the head of the table. Aunt Karen, Cousin Rachel, everyone but me. My mom smiled that prissy country club smile, nodded toward a lonely table in the corner by the bathrooms. One wobbling chair, a half-burnt candle. That's you tonight, she said, as if assigning trash bins. I sat, ordered an old-fashioned, and let them perform their pantomime. Samantha snapping selfies, Dad bragging about golf, Todd beckoning waiters like pets. Mom raised her glass for one more toast to Samantha's brand partnerships, ignoring me completely. But Miguel, our waiter, noticed. When he came by, I slid him my card. Everything they order, put it on their tab. This, I tapped my glass, is mine. His eyes glinted. He'd seen this show before. They feasted ribeyes, charcuterie, bottles of wine. From my corner, I watched the circus-privileged behavior on parade. Then it hit me that chair I sat on was the same rickety one from our lake house kids' table, hauled here as a private joke. A reminder, no matter how well I did, I was still the expendable one. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, plates kept coming. Finally, Dad's voice boomed. Why's the bill over $1,700? Perfect cue. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and crossed to their table. Dad's face lit up relief until I said I paid for my drink and tip. The rest is Miguel's problem. I smiled, left the room, and disappeared into the humid Austin night. Next morning, the pounding at my door came from Frank and Deborah, my parents' receipt in hand, $2, $100 circled like evidence. This is on you. Logan, Dad barked. I didn't flinch. I paid for my drink, I repeated. And then I saw it, Mom's mask cracked. In that moment, I realized power isn't about who shouts the loudest, but about knowing you don't need to play by their rules. They retreated, but not far. A rock crashed through my car window, Dad's signature intimidation. I didn't chase them. I watched their car peel away, the rock gleaming in the morning sun. Inside, I felt clarity. This was no longer just a family spat. It was about boundaries, control, and choosing myself. I filed a police report. Officer Hernandez called it intimidation. I chose to press charges and demand compensation. My phone buzzed, Samantha texting that I was overreacting, Deborah claiming they all make mistakes, begging me to be the bigger person. But I was done being the family doormat. 5 days later, youngest brother Evan showed up with Deborah's chicken pot pie and a warning. They're moving money out of the family fund, Todd helped. They want to cut you out completely. My contributions, $2,000 a month, had been siphoned into spa days, salon visits, designer clothes, and that shiny new SUV Deborah flaunted. The fund was never for emergencies. It was their slush. I froze. The account zeroed it out and left a memo. Effective immediately. Logan Carter is no longer responsible. Voicemails and texts came pouring in frantic pleas, threats, accusations of betrayal. Rachel, my only real ally, came by with tears in her eyes. They don't see you as a person, just to function your wallet, their scapegoat. That hit home. It wasn't about money, it was about entitlement. Rachel warned they'd try to spin this publicly to brand me unstable. So I went on a private online forum and laid out the truth anonymously at first, then with my face on it. People responded, strangers sharing eerily similar tales. My family freaked, Todd threatened defamation suits. Deborah called me mentally ill. Samantha spat venom in group chats. But truth, I realized, is the hardest thing to sue. When Samantha stormed in, I didn't cower. She accused me of airing dirty laundry. I replied, I'm not spreading lies, I'm showing receipts. She left in a huff. Rachel sent a final warning. They're planning something big, calling in favors to ruin your reputation. I anticipated their next move. They threatened my biggest client, Evergreen. So I preemptively wrote a calm, honest letter assuring them I was mentally stable and committed to my work. Then I took a walk down South Congress, breathing in the chaos of the city I'd chosen over my blood. My phone rang Mom. Her voice was too smooth. We can fix this quietly. No more posts. I answered once. You raised me to think loyalty meant losing myself. I raised myself to know the difference between love and control. We're not putting this behind us. We're moving forward, but not together. And I hung up. That night, Rachel brought cheap wine and we laughed real laughter for the first time in months. She asked if my family would ever let go. I looked around my apartment, the broken chair gone, the rock on my shelf. No, I said, but I have. I poured another glass, toasted freedom, and let the messages buzz unanswered. Family, I discovered, isn't obligation, it's respect. And if they can't give that, I'll write my own story, and this time I hold the pen.